Guys, this is a really good article. It's called What Went Wrong with Guy Fawkes Night and Bonfight Night, and it's on whatwentwrong.com, and I'm going to read it to you. It's fantastic. So just bear with me and listen to this. I will leave the link as well as usual, but I'm just going to read it. Erecting a huge bonfire and burning an effigy seems so morbid and backward that it's surprising Guy Fawkes Night, or Bonfire Night as it's also known, is still celebrated in the 21st century. I assume that most people are too busy chomping on a toffee apple as they stare at a crappy fireworks show to be concerned with what they're really commemorating. For those who don't know, Bonfire Night is a celebration of the torture and eventual death of Guy Fawkes, who is the main culprit and failed assassination attempt of King James of Scotland, aka King James I of England and Ireland. Although Fawkes was only one of 13 conspirators, these days he is the only man the public associate with the failed plot, and despite the assassination attempt being more than 400 years in the past, individuals, families, and even children still perpetuate this historical royalist propaganda. On the 5th of November 1605, Londoners were first encouraged to celebrate the king escaping assassination by lighting bonfires, and an Act of Parliament designated each 5th of November as a day of Thanksgiving. This remained compulsory until 1859, but even without an Act of Parliament in force today, the idiotic masses never miss a chance to commemorate Bonfire Night, despite the actual events being so gruesome and barbaric that it boggles the sane mind why an entire nation would still observe such savagery. Let's not forget that questioning of Guy Fawkes was performed under torture, and although he admitted to the crime whilst under duress, he pleaded not guilty during his trial. The main reason torture is an ineffective interrogation method is because a person will admit to pretty much anything just to ease their pain and suffering. But completely ignoring this little tidbit of information, the public today assume that everything Fawkes was found guilty of was unequivocal, like there was some sort of irrefutable proof. In Britain over the last 50 years, we've had the M25-3, the Bridgewater 4, the Guildford 4, the Birmingham 6 and the Maguire 7. So why not the House of Lords 13? Who knows what atrocities took place in order to get their confessions? For all we know, they were all not guilty. After their so-called admission of guilt came the so-called trial. But when the case commenced, the outcome was never really in doubt, and all of the defendants were found guilty of high treason. And what was their punishment, you ask? That each of the plotters would be drawn backwards to their death by horse, their head near the ground, their genitals would then be cut off and burnt before their eyes, and their bowels and hearts removed. They would then be decapitated and dismembered parts of their bodies displayed for the public to see. How completely balanced and rational. Not that Guy Fawkes was trying to do away with monarchy itself. The group were planning to assassinate King James I so they could restore a Catholic monarch to the throne. But it's simply moronic for ordinary folk to celebrate the life of a king who once wrote in his book, The True Law of Free Monarchies, that kings are higher beings than other men. Not only did James think that the royals were superior to commoners, but he also started witch hunts in England and supervised the torture of women accused of being witches. But for all his talk of being higher and better, this prick suffered from arthritis, gout, had a stroke, and in the last year of his life he drank heavily and lost his teeth. With great flawless genes he must have had. What great flawless genes he must have had. I bet he was surprised when he didn't ascend to fucking heaven. It's not like James was the most popular monarch ever. This is proven by the fact that in the first year of his reign, there were a couple of other failed assassination attempts too. These two attempts were known as the by-plot and the main plot, but it wasn't until the gunpowder plot that the masses were whipped up and transformed into a mindless throng who praised their corrupt leader. I guess all it takes to make the public bow to a dictator is a bit of scaremongering. Sound familiar? Very familiar. Very similar to 9/11. George Bush and the Patriot Act, or 7/7, Tony Blair and the Identity Cards Act. After the Gunpowder Plot, Parliament passed the Popish Rescussance Act, which required Catholic citizens to take an oath of allegiance. The whole plot seemed very conspiracy-esque to me. Apparently, the plotters secured a lease to a crypt beneath the House of the Lords, and Fawkes was then placed in charge of the gunpowder they stockpiled there. Then, after receiving an anonymous letter, the authorities searched Westminster Palace and found Fawkes alone guarding the explosives. How convenient! And whilst on topics of conspiracies, the Earl of Salisbury did use the Gunpowder Plot to extract higher subsidies from Parliament. I guess money is always a cause of a byproduct of terrorism, assassination and false flags. Imagine if every July the 7th British people made 4 effigies, placed them in a wooden tube-like structures and burnt them, or if Americans burnt 19 effigies every September the 11th until the year 2291 and beyond. Actually, this non-event is more like the Americans shooting an effigy on March the 30th to celebrate the failed assassination attempt of Ronald Reagan. Bonfire Night is such an insane and bizarre ceremony. Who knows why, as a nation, we're still commemorating the mass hysteria and bloodlust of a brainwashed society more than 400 years ago. Guy Fawkes, the last man to enter Parliament with honest intentions. This is such a great piece, because I was just thinking to myself, you know, the stories about it. I thought, I'm going to look into this, because we just know that it's that he tried to blow up the House of Parliament and he failed, and that's why we celebrate. There's so much more to this story, guys. And this is a massive, this is a very, very early on, a false flag. One of the first ones that they've done, and they've got us celebrating it, and it's all twisted. So the 5th of November has actually become a day for me, because 27 years ago, my dad passed away on this day. So when I see the fireworks going off, it has changed this day for me. But then knowing the true story of what they've got to celebrate, how they tortured these, how they killed these guys, it's disgusting. What they did to these men, and they set Guy Fawkes up. They put him in charge of looking after the gunpowder, and then they went down there and arrested him and said he was trying to do this plot to blow this thing up. And that's when the people took to it, and that's when things changed. So they tried a few things beforehand, and then this thing stuck. And we're still celebrating it today. So if you look at it, it's like you're celebrating a New World Order win back then, and we're still celebrating it now. So when you see the fireworks today going off, celebrate Guy Fawkes and his other 12 friends. You've got Bates, Robert Winter, Christopher White, Ian Wright, Thomas Perry, Guido Fawkes, Robert Catterby, and Thomas Winter. That's who you're thinking of today. When we see those go up, we say rest in peace to our original, these were the original activists. So we're going to celebrate these 13 men today. And there's 8 of them pictured here. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, there's 8 of them pictured here. So once again, we've got Bates, Robert Winter, Christopher Wright, Ian Wright, Thomas Perry, Guido Fawkes, Robert Catterby, and Thomas Winter. Every time you hear some fireworks going off tonight, think about these people, and I'll be thinking about these people and my dad as well. So we're going to flip. November the 5th is getting flipped from this year, 2023, because it was a big lie. And we don't celebrate lies. And as activists, we stand in truth. So that's what you're doing tonight. Every time you hear a firework pop, think of one of these people. And I'll be thinking of one of these people. Big it up, Guido Fawkes, and big up my dad as well. Rest in peace. Peace out, guys.